November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. At Portland International Airport, a quiet man in his mid-40s purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. He boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a short 30-minute trip aboard a Boeing 727. To the other passengers, he seemed ordinary, polite, calm, and well-dressed. But within the hour, he would vanish into history, pulling off one of the most daring and mysterious crimes ever committed in American aviation. Cooper took seat 18C in the rear of the plane. He wore a dark suit, sunglasses, and carried only a briefcase. He ordered a bourbon and soda while chain-smoking cigarettes. Nothing about him seemed unusual until he discreetly handed a folded note to a flight attendant. She assumed it was his phone number and slipped it into her pocket. Leaning closer, he whispered, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." The note claimed his briefcase contained explosives. When the attendant hesitated, Cooper calmly opened it just enough to reveal wires and red sticks inside. His demands were precise: $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready in Seattle for refueling. He spoke softly, never raising his voice, never losing his composure. Unlike Hollywood hijackers, he was polite, even tipping the flight attendants. But his calmness only made the situation more unsettling. In the cockpit, the pilots relayed Cooper's demands to air traffic control. The FBI and airline executives scrambled. This was the first ever case of modern air piracy in the United States, and no one knew how to respond. Authorities decided to comply, fearing he would detonate the bomb mid-flight. As the plane circled Seattle for hours, Cooper remained patient, sipping his bourbon, as if nothing were unusual. The other passengers were told nothing. They assumed the delay was routine. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, night had fallen, and the airport was surrounded by police and FBI agents. The ransom money, 10,000 $20 bills, carefully marked, was quickly prepared. To avoid suspicion, the crew distributed parachutes from a nearby airbase. Cooper allowed all 36 passengers to disembark, keeping only the flight crew aboard. On the rainy tarmac, the exchange was made. The money and parachutes were loaded onto the plane. Cooper was calm, even courteous, reassuring the crew they would not be harmed. Once his demands were met, he ordered the pilots to take off again, this time headed south toward Mexico City. But he had other plans. He instructed the crew to fly low, slow, and with the rear staircase unlocked. It was a bizarre demand, one that no hijacker had ever made before. At 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the dense forests of Washington state, the cockpit instruments detected a sudden pressure change. The pilots looked back, but the cabin was empty. Cooper had lowered the rear staircase and leapt into the stormy night with the ransom money strapped to his body. No parachutist had ever attempted such a jump in those conditions. Freezing rain, high winds, and complete darkness. Search efforts were immediate. Hundreds of soldiers, police officers, and FBI agents scoured the rugged terrain below the flight path. Helicopters, boats, and tracking dogs searched for weeks. But there was no trace of Cooper. No parachute, no body, no money. It was as if he had vanished into the storm. Years passed, and the mystery only deepened. In 1980, a young boy camping along the Columbia River discovered bundles of rotting $20 bills, still bound in rubber bands. The serial numbers matched the ransom money. But the discovery only raised more questions. How did the money end up there? Why wasn't the rest found? The FBI investigated thousands of suspects. Ex-military parachutists, criminals, and even airline employees were considered. Dozens confessed over the years, but none were convincing. Despite decades of effort, no suspect was ever definitively proven to be D.B. Cooper. In 2016, the FBI officially closed the case, admitting they may never know the truth. Theories exploded. Some believe Cooper died in the jump, his parachute failing in the storm. Others think he survived and disappeared with the money, perhaps starting a new life abroad. More fringe ideas suggest inside jobs, lost treasure, or even government cover-ups. Each clue seems to answer one question while opening another. More than 50 years later, the legend of D.B. Cooper endures. He remains the only hijacker in U.S. history to successfully escape with ransom money and vanish without a trace. Was he a skilled professional who planned the perfect crime? Or a desperate man who gambled and never survived the fall? Until evidence is found, the world may never know. One man, one parachute, and one stormy night created one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time.